What
So,
are we
Dan,
talking about today, man?
we got a listener request.
Yay.
Wants to know if we can explain all the hype about electrolytes and how essential they are for health.
Mm, it's a good topic.
Yeah. So, uh, as I was looking through stuff, it just dawned on me like I didn't actually look up any of the current electrolyte supplements that are available out there. I didn't really look it up and see what it is. So, let's go ahead and start sharing.
Yeah, I think you're set to go.
Electrolytes. Electrolytes are essential for basic life functioning, such as maintaining electrical neutrality in cells and generating a conducting action potentials in the nerves and muscles. So the electrolytes that people are going to be most familiar with is going to be sodium, potassium, and magnesium.
True.
However, there are other minerals that are also electrolytes. So calcium being one, bicarbonate, and chloride, and then also phosphorus. So those are electrolytes. However, we don't really supplement bicarbonate and chloride, nor phosphorus. I'm not aware of a phosphorus supplement. I could be wrong, but it's just not normally something that we would associate supplementing for quote unquote electrolytes. So most of the hype around electrolytes is around sports performance, and a
Yep.
lot of it has to do with um, replacing electrolytes lost during sweat and um, maintaining hydration um, throughout the activity. So it is also important in warmer climates. So I live in Arizona now. Used to live in the great state of Texas here in the great state of Texas
Amen.
there.
Amen.
And
God's country.
people can sweat when it gets hot. And when it's hot and humid, you sweat and it doesn't evaporate. And to me, that's a little bit worse. Everybody complains about the temperatures in Phoenix. And every time we go down there, I just don't have an issue with it because it's I hate to
So
say it, but it's a
dry.
dry heat. Yeah.
Super dry.
Yeah. So it doesn't bother me very much. But anywho, so yeah, so most of the hype is around sports performance. Now there is some hype out there about them being beneficial for um, overall health and uh, lowering certain disease risks, which to some extent is true. However, it depends on the quality of your diet, and it also depends on what we're supplementing with. Now, we do have sodium here. I'm going to link the sodium podcast in the show notes. Wow, that is a lot of highlighting. Um, and most of the information that we're going to get from the hype around electrolytes is going to tell people to consume more salt, more sodium.
Mm. Hmm.
Um, However, that's just not the case. And we're going to go through some of that today. So, but looking at the effects of this, so one of the things people will say supplementing with the electrolytes helps prevent muscle cramps. So you see a lot in social media groups about people have muscle cramps, particularly in your calves. And one of the recommendations will be, consume more electrolytes, take some more magnesium. That's magnesium deficiency. And so I have a study
Baby,
here in
get
the
my magnesium.
yeah, the
Sorry.
Journal of Athletic Training and the Influence of Hydration and Electrolyte Supplementation on Incidence and Time to Onset of Exercise Associated Muscle Cramps. Now, in the sodium episode, we also looked at sodium intake on sports performance, and then there was something in there dealing specifically with cramping, and there just doesn't seem to be an association between sodium intake and cramps. There just isn't evidence to support that. That if you have cramping, that somehow it's due to either too much or too little sodium.
All right. So in this study, they took some college-age men and gave them a carbohydrate electrolyte drink. And so they had randomized them to either one. You got the electrolyte beverage or you didn't. And then they kind of just measured how many people got cramps and then the time to cramps. And so overall, they found that like having the electrolyte drink, taking the electrolyte drink before, and then a little bit during the exercise helped delay the time to cramping. However, it didn't really prevent cramps because here you have it 69% of the subjects who got the electrolyte drink still ended up having cramps. So it doesn't appear that dehydration or electrolyte loss are sole causes of cramping, particularly with exercise. So, on the basis of hearing that, well, it's going to help with cramping if you have cramps or whatever, probably not.
Yeah.
Right.
Yep.
So going into potassium, now, when you buy the electrolyte supplements, let's look up, I don't even know really any of the popular ones. I know Element. Let me see. I think it's LMNT. ELMNT.
Yeah, that's a big product if that's what you're looking for.
Yeah, called Element.
Yeah, the zero sugar and all of those. They're real,
Element
that's
electrolytes. Yeah,
Yep.
LMNT. So this is very popular. There's a big hubbub on the interwebs over Element, particularly with the low carb group, because within the ingredients here, they have is like flavoring or something, and they had like 0.4 grams, less than a half of gram of maltodextrin in there. Oh, the low carb community lost their mind over it. They're boycotting Element. It's like, wow. All right. So here, yeah. So Element, usually get them in these pack. Yeah, here we go. So, man, a whole gram of sodium in this one thing. And I've seen the guys on Mind Pump say that they'll take one before and after. So they're consuming 2,000 milligrams of sodium just around their exercise training. We're going to talk about how much sodium is lost in sweat. But that's a lot of sodium. They have 200 milligrams of potassium in there and 60 milligrams of magnesium. I do know a lot of guys who lift who will supplement with magnesium. People find it very hard to hit their magnesium RDI for the day. And we're going to look into chronometer, and I'm going to show you how I hit it. I don't have a problem hitting it. So if you're eating the right foods, you'll find you don't really need to supplement with these things. So let's talk about it here. So potassium intake, the Cinderella electrolyte, and basically higher intakes of potassium help lower blood pressure. And this also reduces risk of stroke in patients who are at increased cardiovascular risk, also reduces risk of stroke for all people. Key sources of potassium include fruits, vegetables, nuts, legumes. Higher potassium intake may be associated with healthy dietary patterns. So if you have a suboptimal diet, it's not a very healthy dietary pattern. You're eating a lot of, processed foods and stuff that comes in a package, probably not going to have a high potassium intake, and that may warrant supplementing with potassium. That'd be okay. Let's look at the sex-specific associations between sodium potassium intake and overall and cause-specific mortality. And we got a bunch of results here, but just real quick, the study demonstrates significant positive associations between daily sodium intake within the range of 2,000 to 7,500 milligrams. 7,500 milligrams is
A lot.
a lot of salt, man. That is a lot.
Wow.
Sodium potassium ratio.
We'll circle back to that when we come to the sweat conversation.
Yeah. Sodium potassium ratio. So the higher that number is, which usually means you're consuming more sodium than potassium. So the higher that number is, the more at risk of cardiovascular disease and overall mortality you are. So decreasing your sodium and increasing your potassium is going to improve your odds of not dying early.
Yes.
Specifically for cardiovascular events. And then also for stroke, looking at those things. Magnesium. The effects of magnesium supplementation on muscle soreness and performance. So they did find that there was a small benefit to perceived muscle soreness from supplementing with magnesium. So supplementing with magnesium may not be a bad idea. And again, it's dependent on your overall dietary intake. Yeah. So as far as sports performance goes, supplementing with these things, we do see some small benefit in there. And I think that that it's overhyped for the amount of benefit that you get, especially when it comes to athletic performance. And the average person, really, we just don't need to be concerned with that because you're not a competitive athlete and we're not looking to shave 0.2 seconds off of your marathon time. You know what I mean?
Right.
You're not looking to go into the powerlifting meet to win by a quarter of a kilo. That's where this supplementation can be beneficial. And now that doesn't mean that is the best thing for your overall health, because many people who are going to be listening to this podcast and who are going to be reading blog posts and getting the information on these electrolytes are going to be the general population who you may be concerned with improving your athletic performance. However, doing so at the risk, you know what I mean? Like the benefit to risk ratio just doesn't seem to be high enough to warrant. I don't recommend these things to anybody. So if somebody, maybe could deal with a little bit more potassium, I would recommend eat some more fruits and vegetables, not find a supplement. Right.
Okay.
If it's just hard for you to eat fruits and vegetables, okay, well, maybe we might talk about a supplement. We still need to work on improving your diet quality.
So kind of the juice isn't really worth the squeeze then.
Yeah, not for the average person.
Right. Cool.
All right. So how essential are these electrolytes? Well, of course they're absolutely essential. So we have a sodium potassium pump in our cells, and everybody may be familiar with, the human body generates an electrical charge, and that comes from that sodium potassium pump. So on one side of the cell, you'll have a higher concentration of sodium, and on the other side of the cell, you'll have a higher concentration of potassium. And then what you end up having from there is a flow of electrons. And that flow of electrons is an electrical charge. And that's where that electrical charge comes from in our body. So when those things become out of balance, that can affect certain things. You can certainly feel fatigued. You may experience other symptoms like nausea, dizziness, things like that. However, those are extreme cases, and we have names for those. Would be be different for each of the electrolytes. So hyponatremia would be low sodium concentrations. Hypernatremia would be high sodium concentrations. And I think the one for potassium is hypo and hyperkalemia. So Na being sodium and K being potassium. But talking about the sodium, so as we saw in our element supplements here, we have a lot of sodium. Yeah, and they even say right here, more salt, not less. Growing body of research reveals optimal health outcomes occur at sodium levels 2 to 3 times the government recommendations. That's why we say more salt, not less. Oh, where is this coming from? Uh-oh. Uh-oh. Well, let me see what we're seeing here. The FDA's misguidance on sodium. I've looked at this before.
You have or have not?
I have, because these things are in purple. I don't remember looking at this. You've been watching the news. You know what? This might have been a link on Twitter or something I clicked on. The FDA launched another attack. I love this language. The FDA launched an attack. Guidance for industry, voluntary sodium reduction goals. Well, I'm not sure that's an attack. Yeah, all they're asking for is for food industry to voluntarily lower the amount of sodium they're putting in food. Anywho, yeah, and we get this language here. When you really drill into these claims, you come back empty-handed. You find papers that cherry-picked epidemiology and make absurd assumptions to defend salt restriction. Mortality benefits from U.S. population-wide restriction in sodium consumption. Oh yeah,
So the
yeah.
bat. Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so this is they did 3 different models showing what the outcomes would be over 10 years. Method 1, indirect effects mediated by blood pressure changes as observed in randomized control trials of anti-hypertension medications. Method 2, epidemiological studies, or method 3, the different modeling approaches were used to model the same scenario. Yeah, so basically what they show is that no matter how you go about it, lowering sodium intake is going to lower the number of deaths. So they estimated here 280,000 to 500,000 deaths would be averted by lowering sodium. An instantaneous reduction to 1,500 milligrams sustained over 10 years. That's not cherry picked. I believe this one they used quite a few different studies that they pulled from. Yeah, so I'm not sure how that's cherry picked. And then Intersalt. On the other hand, we have massive population studies, the Intersalt study, that have already settled this debate. Dietary salt intake didn't predict the prevalence of high blood pressure. The highest salt population actually had a lower median blood pressure than the lowest salt population. That's not true.
That's absolutely not true.
I'm familiar with the Intersalt study.
Yep.
Where is this? Let's go full text. Blah, 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 blah. Across 52 centers. Yeah, so he said 48, right? Across 48 global population. Yeah. So Intersalt looked at 52 centers, not global populations. It's different cohorts within different countries. However, some of the countries had more than one cohort. Sodium excretion ranged from 0.2 millimole per 24 hours. The Yanomamo are a no salt culture. They don't eat salt. To 242 millimoles for North China. Yeah, so the lowest would be the Yanomamo Indians, and the highest intake would be North China. Yeah, we're gonna find that. So in individual subjects, it was significantly related to blood pressure. So sodium excretion within individual subjects within the centers was significantly related to blood pressure. Four centers found very low sodium excretion, low blood pressure, little to no upward slope of blood pressure with age. And that's kind of the main, one of the main arguments for lowering sodium is that we do have these populations that have really, really, really low salt intakes, all the way down to the Yanomamo, which have zero salt intake, and they don't experience age-related blood pressure increases the way the rest of the Western world does. Across the other 48 centers, sodium was significantly related to the slope of blood pressure with age, but not to median blood pressure or prevalence of high blood pressure. Yep. So let's see. Oh, yeah. I mean, I can just start looking at the graphs here. So I don't know about you, Dwayne. That looks like it goes up and to the right to me.
Sure does.
Up and to the right,
Sure
up and to the
does.
right, up and to the right, up and to the right.
Yes, sir.
So the main thing with the intersalt study here was that so we can see the scatter of dots in all of these different things. So what they found, and I kind of read it in the abstract, but let me translate it, is that they had 52 different cohorts which they compiled all this data on. And what they found was that if you compared the cohorts to each other, there was variation. So basically you're going to see different blood pressure related effects regarding sodium intake for different populations, which is expected, right? Because sodium isn't the only thing that affects blood pressure. They even
Potassium
talk about
does
it.
too.
Yeah, but so an overall healthy diet, a diet quality is going to affect it. BMI is going to affect it. Activity level is going to affect it. A whole bunch of different things. So it would be expected to see variations within, so some cohorts may consume more salt than others, but have lower blood pressure. And that's expected because we even see differences in cardiovascular death amongst certain populations versus others, even though that population smokes more than the
Right.
other one.
Right.
So, so these inter-center differences that we find within intersalt is kind of expected. However, when you look within each of the cohorts, as sodium intake increases, so does blood pressure and cardiovascular mortality, and you can see those from the lines here, right? So each one of these charts plots out, the different effects from these different centers, and when we look within center, more sodium intake relates to more cardiovascular mortality. It also translates to more sodium intake equals higher increases in blood pressure as you age.
Yep, absolutely.
Let me see, because I know they have the chart here. And then for this dashed line going down, so what they did is they removed the four cohorts that had the lowest salt intake, the lowest sodium intake, and then redid the analysis. And then that's where they found that the statistically significant association between sodium increase and median blood pressure. They still, now the relation between sodium intake and blood pressure increase over time due to age was still significant. But the median blood pressure, that statistical significance went away. And they say it somewhere in here that once you removed those four cohorts, they lost statistical power. So that, the ability to find that statistical significance went away because you just didn't have enough people to have statistical power to do the calculation.
Mm.
Yeah. So this is, let me see if we can zoom in. Uh, this is hard to see. Median urinary sodium excretion and median blood pressure. I guess this is systolic. This one's diastolic. Okay, so ba, 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 ba. Where is it? Okay, so People's Republic of China. Let's go over here. Where was it? Median urinary. So this one here. So yeah, 242. Whoops. So right here is our 242. And median systolic is 117, diastolic is 70. Now we have to go to Brazil. Here we go. The Yanomamo. All right, so median urinary sodium excretion 0.2. Median systolic was 95. Median diastolic is 61. Dwayne, I'm not very good at math, but is 95 less than 117?
95 is definitely less than 117.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Is 61 less than 70?
Yeah. 61 is less than
Okay.
70.
Yeah. So the lowest salt intake had lower median blood pressure than the highest salt intake.
Yep. There you go.
Uh, Yeah. Oh, look at here. The following conclusions may be drawn from the intersalt data. Within center sodium excretion was significantly related to blood pressure in individual subjects, and at least in part, this relationship was independent of body mass index and alcohol intake. Alcohol increases blood pressure. Sodium excretion was also significantly related across centers to the slope of blood pressure with age. Thus, lower average sodium intake might have a favorable influence on blood pressure, on change of blood pressure with age, and hence on cardiovascular mortality. So it's very, very clear to me that Rob Wolf didn't read the Intersalt study.
Yeah, I think he had a bad dream. That's what I'm thinking.
Getting out of that, yeah.
Yeah.
And then we talked about this J-shaped curve in the sodium one, and so you're going to find this J-shaped curve when the way that they are measuring sodium intake is done improperly, and usually that is done due to so the gold standard for measuring sodium intake is a urinary 24-hour urinary analysis. So basically, people will come and they'll give you a jug basically, and you pee in
Mhm.
that thing for
Mhm.
24 hours. You collect all of your urine for 24 hours, and then you give that back to them, and they will analyze that and see how much sodium is in there. And your urinary excretion is a very, very good indicator of how much sodium you ingested. And we see this J-shaped curve when they use a mathematical equation to estimate the 24-hour sodium excretion, and they're not actually measuring 24-hour sodium excretion. I wonder if we could. Ooh, look at that.
Did you click on it and it works?
Yeah.
Awesome.
I was
Sweet.
gonna highlight it and see if we urinary sodium and potassium excretion and risk of cardiovascular events. I wonder if they're
That's
yeah, so that's the graph that they had. Now this
yeah.
doesn't have that optimal thing that they showed.
Yeah.
What do we have
They
here?
took some liberty with that.
Yeah. Yeah, see, we estimated 24-hour urinary sodium and potassium excretion from a morning fasted urine sample. So not even they didn't take a 24-hour urine sample. They took a morning fasted urine sample, which is not going to be indicative of, you know what I mean? Because you fasted. So some of that sodium is going to have been used up. They use the Kawasaki formula. This just gets worse and worse.
Yeah.
What? Hold on. To determine the association between estimated urinary sodium, potassium excretion, and cardiovascular events in patients with established cardiovascular disease or diabetes mellitus. Okay. I
Yeah.
wonder.
Yeah. So
Um,
that was their
yes.
focus.
Kawasaki formula was used to estimate the 24-hour sodium. Yeah, so the Kawasaki formula, here you go. The Kawasaki formula is a validated, so it is validated. However, it has been validated in there you go, validated in an Asian population, and it's validated for patients taking antihypertensive therapy. Now, some of these people may have been, man, I made a mistake by clicking on this stuff.
The deep dive, bro. It's a deep dive.
Uh,
There's a lot of what's the words I'm wanting to say? Modifiers. A lot of
yeah,
modifiers to the results of this. You got people who have cardiovascular history. They're taking cardiovascular
yes.
medications, just using a morning fasting excretion instead of like a full day. There's all kinds of this is yeah, like, blah. You lost me. I'm out.
Uh,
Bottom line
hold on. They
is,
need to hold on. They should say something. Yeah, let's look at the limitations. Our cohort includes participants with established cardiovascular disease, and the formula they used is validated in people free of cardiovascular disease. Dietary intake of sodium in our study's population may be lower than patients in routine clinical practice. Yeah, so the people who participated in the study are at risk. They have established cardiovascular disease. And so we would expect to see those people have lower sodium intakes, and we would expect them to have a higher risk of mortality. Right? So
yeah,
where that
yeah,
tail comes up at the end there is going to be the people who are consuming less sodium specifically because they have cardiovascular disease. And it would be the most at risk people would be down there at the tail end, right? If you just walk in and you know what I mean, like your doctor. So established cardiovascular disease could just be high blood pressure. And so you walk in and, you get diagnosed with high blood pressure. Doc says, here, take some antihypertensives, and you don't reduce the amount of sodium you're taking in, you're
yeah,
at less at risk of mortality than the person over here who's really, really sick,
yeah.
right? And they're like at the point where it's like, listen, you have to reduce your sodium, otherwise this is going to turn out very, very bad for you.
Yeah, before you jump out of there, look at second urinary excretions is influenced by a number of factors,
Uh,
particular medications such as diuretics, ACE
ACE
inhibitors,
inhibitors.
angiotensin 2 receptor blockers, and then subgroup analysis by diuretic use did not influence finding and finding it's just on and on and on.
Oh, here
And
you go. Subgroup analysis by diuretic use did not influence findings, and since baseline urine collection occurred before trial run-in, patients would not have received trial medications at the time of baseline urinary collection. So the
oh wait, read the
formula.
third. Wait, don't go farther. Read the third.
Oh,
Read the
I
third. Read third. Third.
Third,
Urinary
urinary
electrolytes.
electrolytes were measured at a single time point and may not accurately reflect sodium potassium excretion during the course of the trial. Yes, of course. So that it's was one urinary analysis, a fasted urinary analysis in the morning before the trial started. So, but I want to talk about this. So the patients would not have received any of these diuretics or ACE inhibitors or any of that thing. Now, remember, this formula was validated for Asian cohorts that are free from cardiovascular disease and diabetes, but it's also validated for antihypertensive use. However, none of the patients in this trial would have received antihypertensives at the time of the urine collection. So, um, So going back to, so this optimal range here, the science-backed recommendation is going to be for a population with established cardiovascular disease or diabetes, utilizing a formula that is not validated for them.
Yeah.
So there you go. So the hype is, man, the hype is overhyped.
Yeah. So, well, I was going to jump onto something. I don't want to get ahead of you or
No, go ahead.
change.
Go ahead.
I was just going to say, so some of the takeaways I'm seeing so far is you can take too many electrolytes because you need an electrolyte balance, and overuse of electrolyte drinks can cause all kinds of problems for you, heart rhythm issues like arrhythmia,
Yep.
fatigue, nausea, cramping, constipation, blah
Yep.
blah 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 blah. Sodium is not your answer. Sodium is not the answer. Even just it reflects in blood pressure in most people is what we're seeing, as well as, and especially for older people. And however, potassium does have an effect on blood pressure. And I just want to remind everybody, just let's go back to the original electrolyte drink, which was Gatorade.
Gatorade.
And Gatorade was formulated for, I can't remember the school, but a specific school, specific college in Florida that had massive, hot days in their preseason workouts. And these guys were falling out and having all kinds of issues. And that's what it was formulated with. But all of a sudden, everybody sees, oh my gosh, the guys in Florida there, and just people all over the country start taking it.
Mm-hmm.
And it didn't work the same because you're screwing up your electrolyte balance.
Yeah, so Gatorade has the carbohydrate and they have sodium in there. It is lacking in potassium and magnesium.
Correct.
So,
and
but
you're going to
again,
talk about sweating. You're going to talk about sweating.
I'm going to
too.
talk about the sweating. Yeah. So real quickly, lifestyle modifications to prevent and control hypertension. Of course, smoking, reducing sodium, increasing your potassium. So a diet rich in high potassium fruit and vegetables is strongly recommended. Calcium supplementation reduces blood pressure. Magnesium should be considered by anyone seeking to prevent or treat blood pressure. The foundation for healthy blood pressure consists of a healthy diet, adequate exercise, stress reduction, sufficient amounts of potassium and magnesium, and lower your alcohol usage.
Yep.
So let's look at this one real quick here. Does replacing sodium excreted in sweat attenuate the health benefits of physical activity? Now, this is an interesting paper here because the hype around this again is, well, you have to replace these electrolytes lost due to sweat. And one of the benefits that this paper posits, one of the benefits we see from exercise is specifically that you experience a decrease in serum sodium levels because you're sweating it out. So there's this reduction in sodium that happens from sweating. And that may be part of, I don't think it may be, it is part of the reason why exercise has this effect on lowering blood pressure, is because you are experiencing a reduction in sodium.
Yes.
And so they go to compare the health benefits between physical activity and reduced sodium intake independent of one another, right? And then they talk about sodium loss during exercise. So as we saw in the element thing, they have 1 gram of sodium. So the highest reported sodium concentration in sweat ranges is between 3 and 10 millimoles per liter. And so that comes out to, at the top end, it's close to a gram. It's close to 1,000 milligrams of sodium per liter of sweat. So I just want everyone to understand that. Like, I don't have a liter bottle here with me. You have to sweat out 1 liter of fluid to even begin to think about approaching that 1,000 milligrams that electrolyte packet had in it.
Which is massive.
That is a
Massive.
lot of sweat. Most people, when you go to your air-conditioned gym, are not going to be seeing that amount. All right. And most people are going to be at the lower end. So I think on average, people are going to be excreting out probably somewhere 500 to 700 milligrams per liter of sweat. And you're not sweating out an entire liter of sweat unless you're doing something hardcore. Now there are people who do sweat that much, and we're going to talk about that. However, the amount of sodium that the average person is losing in their workout does not call for you to take a sodium supplement. You don't have to put salt in your water. You don't have to worry about all this stuff. The way you replace that is just eat a normal meal.
Right. Right.
You
Right.
are consuming, so the average intake is 3,400 milligrams of sodium per day. That is more than plenty. And if you're replacing what you lose during sweat, and even worse, if you're replacing that and then some, right, you're potentially negating any beneficial effect that exercise may have had on reducing your blood pressure or reducing your risk of cardiovascular disease and stuff. And we see this all the time. There are lots and lots of people who are of the idea that you need more salt and you need more red meat and you need more of this, and they're super top athletes and they end up dying of a heart attack at 50.
That's right. That's right. That's
Right.
right.
So they talk about this, the potential health benefits of not replacing sodium lost in sweat. The analysis of 68 crossover, 10 randomized controlled trials of dietary salt reduction suggests a reduction in dietary sodium intake of 50 millimoles per day reduces systolic blood pressure in middle-aged people by 5 to 7 millimeters of mercury. North Manhattan, a 22 millimole per day reduction reduces the risk of stroke by 17% independent of blood pressure, and stroke mortality decreases by 25% when sodium intake decreases by 24 millimoles per day independent of variations in blood pressure.
Mm-hmm.
So yes. So what's the hype around these? It's mostly about athletic performance, and that's mostly in top performing athletes. Those are the people who need to worry about it. Now, what people are doing to be the top performing athletes, talk about professional level athletes here, Olympians and stuff like that, is not necessarily the best thing for their health. Many of those top performing athletes retire very early and they also die very early. And the reason for that is they do all of these crazy things to increase their athletic performance that don't translate to health outcome.
Right. Right. There's a
Right.
sacrifice.
Yeah. So as far as supplementing, so these things are essential. However, you are going to get enough of it in your diet. Now, if you have a hard time meeting your potassium and magnesium and calcium intakes, supplementing is probably a fine idea for those things. However, the idea that you need more sodium is just wild. It just isn't supported. And even when we went to Element and we looked at their own stuff, it's not supported by their own references.
Right. Right.
So I showed before my just a couple sample. Let me see. I don't think this is the right one. No, custom meals. Yeah, here we go. All right. Tom Yum tofu. You might remember this one.
Mm-hmm.
So this was a meal that I ate, and we compared this to meal. So a completely vegan day versus a day that had animal protein in it. Meeting all of your nutrients and everything. Let's get to, here we go. Let me move this. All right. So this one meal that I have here, this tom yum tofu for calcium, gives you 92.6% of your daily value. For magnesium, gives you 54%. And for potassium, gives you 60.9%. Let's see, back to meals. And then we had the tofu scramble. Let me just, you know what I'm going to do? I'm going to add both of these. Oh, no. How do I do this? Oh, add to diary. So I'm adding my tofu scramble and I'm going to add my tom yum tofu. Add it to the diary. We're going to go back to the diary and we are going to look at for the day. So just those two meals that I had meets 80% of all of the targets, 80% of all of our electrolyte needs. And the reason that it doesn't hit 100% of the electrolytes is because of the sodium. So we'll go down
109%
here.
of your 109% of your potassium.
Yeah. Yeah. So 110% of potassium.
Yep.
214% of calcium. 125% of the magnesium. And again, the sodium is low, but that's because I have high blood pressure.
Yep. 125% of magnesium.
Yep. So you can see all of these things here. So between these two things, the tofu tom yum and the tofu scramble, hitting all of my amino acids, all of these. So iodine is low. And again, you could improve the iodine in there with by adding fish, seafood, or iodized salt. By adding the iodized salt, you would improve the iodine content and the sodium content of that. But again, these two meals together is only 500 milligrams. So there's a lot of people out there who really struggle with sodium. Sodium is very, very hard to get down. And this, of course, would be higher because I do use a little bit of salt at the table. It's just not added in here for this. So, but that's well under, the 1500 that we saw in the three models. Right. But you can see all of the electrolytes, the ones that would be supplemented, calcium, magnesium, and potassium, hit those just fine. Vitamin K, 900% of the vitamin K there.
Wow.
All right. And that's just two meals here. That's 1,300 calories. So you could easily hit this stuff all day. So I know people out there who will, again, they'll specifically supplement with magnesium because they have a hard time hitting that. But again, depending on what you're eating, you may need to supplement with one or two of these things. Perfectly fine. But the sodium intake, I don't know. I just can't drive this home enough. Like, the sodium is going to kill you, man.
That's pretty hardcore right there. Sodium is going to kill you.
Sodium
is going to kill you. It's going to sneak up on you and it's going to bite you one day. That's for true. That'd be for true if you're from Louisiana.
That'd be for true. Yeah.
Yeah, it's going to happen. You get all the sodium. I mean, yeah, I'm not going to even talk. I'm not going to talk anymore.
Yeah. Well, I'll link to the sodium episode and, please go watch that because it goes much more in depth on sodium specifically. I know we talked a lot about it here, but it is, it's not even disputed in scientific circles. The people who are doing the scientific research just don't dispute it. It's an accepted thing, right? Increases in sodium within populations, people experience increases in blood pressure, and then you'll also experience the increase in blood pressure due to age. So if you want to supplement with potassium, magnesium, calcium, that's perfectly fine. Again, the preference is to try and get that from your diet. So, if you find that you're low on those things, you might supplement now and then start working your way towards a diet that incorporates more of those. So you're taking less of the supplements because we don't tend to see the same benefit from the supplement that we do when we get it from the whole food matrix. So there is a difference in outcomes there. The getting it from your food does seem to be better. However, getting it from a supplement is better than being deficient in it. So hope that answers your question.
I'd just like to say to the viewer that sent that in or who requested this conversation, we encourage all of you guys, if you have an idea, if you have a question about something, or if you're interested in something you've heard or seen on the interwebs or at your local gym, give us a shout. Give us a shout. We'll be happy to dive deep into it.
Yep, happy to look at it. And just like we went into the Element website and went through their resources or their references, sorry, I that was a mistake on my part. But anyway,
I was about to get my fishing rod and reel you back out of there.
The things that they cite don't even support what they're saying.
And it's so common, guys. This is common. This happens all the time when people say something. It happens in advertising. It even happens on the internet or X or wherever, and just people believe everything that's said, and it's just not so. So anyway, that's what we're here for.
All right. Well, thanks for the question. Hope some minds were blown. Hope you guys take something away from this. We'll see you guys next time. Coach Lambie and Dwayne out.